Let me explain something very important, especially if you're over 40, 50, or 60 years old. Most people believe that muscle loss is just a normal part of aging. They think weakness, slower movement, poor balance, and shrinking muscles are inevitable. But that is absolutely not true. What you start experiencing is called sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass, strength, and function. And here's just the key point. Sarcopenia is not caused by age alone. It's caused by nutrient deficiency, inactivity, and poor protein signaling in the body. Now, for years, people have been told, just drink bone broth, add collagen, have more soup. And while bone broth has some benefits, it does not rebuild muscle. Why? Because collagen and bone broth are low in leucine, the most critical amino acid for muscle growth. And without leucine, your muscles simply don't get the message to rebuild. So today I want to talk about a far more powerful food, one that actually turns muscle building back on, even in older adults. Most people have been conditioned to believe that losing muscle is just part of getting older. They're told that weakness, slower movement, poor balance, shrinking arms and legs, and fatigue are unavoidable once you reach a certain age. And over time, that belief becomes so deeply ingrained that people stop fighting it. They stop questioning it. They stop trying. But let me be very clear with you. This belief is not only wrong, it's dangerous. Muscle loss, known as sarcopenia, is not an automatic consequence of aging. Aging does not switch off your body's ability to build or maintain muscle. What actually happens is far more subtle and far more controllable. The body simply stops receiving the signals it needs to keep muscle tissue alive and strong. Think about this for a moment. If aging alone destroyed muscle, then every older adult would be weak, fragile, and immobile. But we know that's not true. We see people in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who are strong, active, balanced, and independent. That alone should tell you something very important. Muscle loss is not inevitable. The real problem begins with inactivity. When muscles are not used, the body assumes they are no longer needed. And the human body is incredibly efficient. It does not waste energy maintaining tissue it believes has no purpose. So when movement decreases, muscle protein synthesis slows down. Muscle breakdown speeds up. Over time, muscle fibers shrink, weaken, and disappear. But inactivity is only part of the equation. The second major factor is nutrition, specifically inadequate protein and poor amino acid signaling. As we age, our bodies become less responsive to protein. This is called anabolic resistance. That means older adults need a stronger nutritional signal to stimulate muscle repair and growth. Unfortunately, most people do the opposite. They eat less protein as they age, not more. They rely on soups, toast, processed foods, and sugary snacks that do nothing to support muscle tissue. And then they wonder why their legs feel weak, why getting up from a chair is harder, why climbing stairs feels exhausting, why their balance is off. It's not age. It's a lack of the right signals. Muscle is living tissue. It constantly breaks down and rebuilds. When breakdown exceeds rebuilding, sarcopenia develops. But if rebuilding equals or exceeds breakdown, muscle is preserved and can even grow. That process does not stop at 40, 50, or 70 years old. It only stops when the body no longer receives the instructions to continue. Those instructions come from two main sources: mechanical stress and nutrition. Mechanical stress doesn't mean heavy weights or intense workouts. It simply means using your muscles against resistance. Walking, standing, carrying groceries, rising from a chair, using resistance bands, these all tell your body this muscle is needed. And when that signal is present, the body listens. Nutrition provides the raw materials and the chemical message to rebuild. Without sufficient high-quality protein and key amino acids, the body cannot respond to movement no matter how much you exercise. This is why some people stay active but still lose muscle. They are missing the nutritional trigger. One of the most harmful myths is that muscle loss is natural and therefore unavoidable. This belief leads to acceptance, and acceptance leads to decline. People stop pushing themselves. They avoid movement out of fear of injury. They eat less because they think their body doesn't need as much fuel. Slowly, strength fades, not because it had to, but because it was never protected. Another overlooked factor is inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation, common with poor diet, stress, and inactivity, accelerates muscle breakdown. The body shifts into a catabolic state, meaning it breaks down tissue faster than it builds it. This is not aging, it's metabolic imbalance. Hormones also play a role. Insulin sensitivity, growth hormone signaling, and testosterone levels all influence muscle health. But here's the key point. Exercise and proper nutrition improve hormonal signaling at any age. The body adapts when given the opportunity. What's truly remarkable is how quickly muscle responds when the right conditions are restored. Studies consistently show that older adults can regain strength and muscle mass in weeks, not years. Balance improves, walking speed increases, falls decrease, confidence returns. That doesn't happen if muscle loss were permanent or age-driven. Sarcopenia is a condition, not a destiny. The danger of untreated muscle loss goes far beyond appearance. Muscle is essential for blood sugar control, joint stability, posture, metabolism, and overall survival. Low muscle mass is strongly associated with higher risk of falls, fractures, hospitalization, loss of independence, and early mortality. This is not about vanity. This is about quality of life. And yet muscle is one of the most adaptable tissues in the human body. Even later in life, muscle cells retain the ability to respond to stimuli. They can increase protein synthesis. They can grow stronger. They can recover. The body does not forget how to build muscle. It simply needs to be reminded. When people understand this, everything changes. They stop seeing themselves as fragile. They stop blaming age. They take responsibility, not in a harsh way, but in an empowering way. They realize that small, consistent actions can produce massive results over time. Walk every day, simple resistance movements, adequate protein intake, restful sleep. These are not extreme measures. They are basic biological needs. So if you've been told that muscle loss is just part of getting older, I want you to challenge that idea right now. Aging does not steal muscle, neglect does. And neglect is reversible. Your body is always listening, it's always adapting, and when you give it the right signals, it responds no matter your age. For years, bone broth has been promoted as a miracle food for aging bodies. You hear it everywhere. Drink bone broth for strength, bone broth for muscle, bone broth for vitality. It sounds logical. After all, it comes from bones, joints, and connective tissues, so people assume it must be rebuilding the very structures that are breaking down with age. But this is where a critical misunderstanding has taken place, and it's holding many people back from real progress. Bone broth is not a muscle-building food. The statement may surprise you, but it's important to understand why. Muscle tissue has very specific nutritional requirements. It does not grow or maintain itself on just any protein. It needs complete proteins in sufficient amounts, and more importantly, it needs the right amino acid signals to turn muscle synthesis on. Bone broth simply does not provide that signal. Most of the protein in bone broth comes from collagen. Collagen is not a complete protein. It is missing essential amino acids that muscle tissue requires to rebuild. In particular, it is extremely low in leucine, the key amino acid responsible for activating muscle protein synthesis through the mTOR pathway. Without enough leucine, your muscles never receive the message that it's time to grow or even maintain themselves. This is where many people go wrong. They believe that as long as they are getting protein, they are supporting muscle health. But protein quality matters just as much as protein quantity. You can drink bone broth every day and still be starving your muscles of what they truly need. Collagen has its place. It supports skin elasticity, joint health, tendons, and ligaments. It can be helpful for connective tissue, and it may even support gut lining integrity, but muscle fibers are built differently. They require a complete amino acid profile, especially branched-chain amino acids and leucine in particular. Bone broth does not deliver this. Another issue is dosage. Even if bone broth did contain more muscle-building amino acids, the amount you would need to consume to stimulate muscle growth would be impractical. A typical cup of bone broth contains only a small amount of protein, often between 6 and 10 grams. Compare that to what older adults actually need to overcome anabolic resistance. In many cases, that's 25 to 40 grams of high-quality protein per meal with enough leucine to trigger synthesis. Bone broth simply cannot reach that threshold. What happens instead is this: people feel like they're doing something healthy, they feel comforted, they feel nourished, but their muscles continue to weaken over time, legs shrink, grip strength declines, posture worsens, and balance becomes unstable. And because bone broth has been labeled as a strength food, the real problem goes unnoticed. There is also a psychological trap here. Bone broth is easy. It's warm, it's soothing, it requires no chewing, no effort, and no behavioral change. Unfortunately, muscle does not respond to comfort. Muscle responds to challenge and proper nutrition. When we replace real muscle building foods with liquid collagen, we send the wrong message to the body. Another misconception is that collagen somehow turns into muscle once inside the body. That's not how human physiology works. The body breaks protein down into individual amino acids and then rebuilds tissue based on genetic and metabolic priorities. If the amino acids needed for muscle construction are missing, the body cannot improvise. It cannot magically create leucine or essential amino acids out of thin air. This becomes especially problematic as we age. Older adults already struggle with reduced appetite, slower digestion, and diminished protein absorption. When bone broth replaces solid protein-rich meals, muscle breakdown accelerates. The body begins to borrow amino acids from existing muscle tissue to meet its needs. Over time, this leads to further weakness and frailty. Bone broth also lacks the mechanical synergy needed for muscle preservation. Muscle maintenance requires not only amino acids, but also insulin and growth signaling, which are stimulated by adequate caloric intake and balanced meals. Bone broth is low in calories and does not sufficiently stimulate these pathways. It may hydrate you, but it does not nourish muscle tissue. This does not mean bone broth is useless. It can be a supportive food, especially for joint comfort or during illness, but it should never be viewed as a primary protein source for preventing or reversing sarcopenia. When people rely on it as a muscle solution, they are unintentionally accelerating muscle loss. The real danger lies in the delay. Sarcopenia does not happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, year by year. By the time someone realizes they are weaker, less stable, and less confident in their movement, significant muscle mass has already been lost. And during that time, many believed they were doing the right thing by drinking bone broth. Muscle is metabolically expensive tissue. The body only keeps it when it is convinced that it's necessary and properly supported. Bone broth does not provide that reassurance. It does not activate muscle building pathways. It does not prevent muscle breakdown, and it does not meet the protein needs of aging muscle. When people finally shift away from collagen-only solutions and begin consuming complete leucine-rich proteins, the difference is dramatic. Strength returns, endurance improves, recovery becomes faster, and the body starts to behave like it was designed to adaptive, resilient, and responsive. So if you've been relying on bone broth to protect your muscles, understand this clearly. You have not failed. You were misinformed. And once you give your body what it actually needs, it will respond. Muscle doesn't disappear because of age. It disappears because it's underfed and underused. There is a reason certain foods quietly stand the test of time while others come and go with health trends. Some foods don't need hype because their physiology speaks for itself. Cottage cheese is one of those foods. It may not look exciting and it may not be trendy, but from a muscle building and sarcopenia fighting standpoint, it is one of the most effective foods you can include in your diet, especially as you get older. What makes cottage cheese so powerful is not just that it contains protein, but the type of protein it provides and the way your body responds to it. Cottage cheese is rich in casein, a slow digesting complete protein. Unlike fast proteins that spike amino acids quickly and then disappear, casein releases amino acids gradually into the bloodstream over several hours. This creates a steady, sustained supply of building blocks for muscle tissue. Muscle does not rebuild itself in short bursts. It requires time, it requires availability, and it requires consistency. Casein provides exactly that. But the real muscle activating component in cottage cheese is leucine. Leucine is not just another amino acid, it is the trigger. It is the on switch. When leucine reaches a certain level in the bloodstream, it activates a signaling pathway known as mTOR. This pathway tells your muscle cells that resources are available and that it is safe to rebuild, repair, and grow. Without leucine, that signal never fully turns on. As we age, this signal becomes weaker. The muscle cells become less sensitive, meaning they require a stronger leucine stimulus to respond. This is why older adults can eat protein and still lose muscle. They are not reaching the leucine threshold needed to stimulate synthesis. Cottage cheese helps bridge that gap in a simple, natural way. Unlike collagen-based foods, cottage cheese contains all essential amino acids in proportions the body can use. This means once leucine turns the switch on, the materials needed to actually build muscle are already. Nothing is missing, nothing has to be borrowed from existing muscle tissue. Another critical advantage of cottage cheese is its digestibility. It is gentle on the stomach and well tolerated by most people, even those with reduced digestive function. For older adults who struggle with large meals, chewing, or heavy meats, cottage cheese offers a practical solution. You can consume a meaningful amount of high-quality protein without overwhelming the digestive system. Timing also plays an important role, and this is where cottage cheese truly shines. Muscle repair and growth predominantly occur during rest, particularly during sleep. At night, the body shifts into a recovery mode. Hormones involved in repair are released and tissue regeneration increases. However, if amino acids are not available during this time, muscle breakdown can exceed muscle building. This is why consuming cottage cheese in the evening can be so effective. The slow digestion of casein ensures a steady flow of amino acids throughout the night. This reduces muscle breakdown, supports repair, and improves morning strength. Instead of waking up in a catabolic state, the body wakes up better nourished. Research consistently shows that nighttime casein intake improves muscle protein synthesis, especially in older adults. This is not speculation, this is physiology in action. Cottage cheese also supports metabolic health, which indirectly protects muscle tissue. Stable blood sugar levels reduce inflammation and insulin resistance, both of which contribute to muscle loss. The combination of protein and minimal carbohydrates in cottage cheese helps maintain metabolic balance, creating an internal environment where muscle can thrive. Another overlooked benefit is satiety. Cottage cheese helps control appetite and reduces late-night snacking on sugar-laden foods that promote inflammation and fat gain. When nutrition is stable, recovery improves. When recovery improves, muscle preservation follows. Some people worry about fat content, sodium or dairy intolerance. These concerns are often overstated. Low-fat, full-fat, and reduced sodium options are widely available. The key is choosing what works for your body and digestion. For those who tolerate dairy, cottage cheese is one of the most efficient protein sources available. What's important to understand is that muscle responds to patterns, not perfection. You don't need massive quantities. You don't need supplements. A modest, consistent intake of leucine-rich protein sends a powerful message to the body over time. Cottage cheese fits seamlessly into that pattern. Muscle is incredibly responsive when given the right signals. Even people who believe they've lost too much strength often notice improvements within weeks, better balance, easier movement, stronger legs, improved confidence. This is not because cottage cheese is magical. It's because it restores a signal that had been missing. The body is always listening. When it receives consistent cues that muscle tissue is needed and supported, it adapts, it rebuilds, it protects. Cottage cheese does something very important psychologically as well. It simplifies the process. When people realize that something so basic can make such a difference, they become consistent. Consistency is what changes biology, not extremes, not trends. Sarcopenia develops when muscle is ignored and underfed. It reverses when muscle is challenged and properly nourished. Cottage cheese delivers a nutritional message that muscle understands clearly and efficiently. This is not about chasing youth. It's about preserving function. It's about staying strong enough to live independently, move confidently, and enjoy life without fear of weakness. And it starts by giving your muscles what they've been asking for all along. One of the biggest misunderstandings in health and aging is the belief that nutrition alone can solve muscle loss. Food is essential, but without movement, even the best nutrition will fall short. Muscle is not passive tissue. It is designed to respond to demand. When demand disappears, muscle disappears with it. This is why the combination of proper protein intake and regular movement is so powerful. Together, they send a clear, unmistakable message to the body: this muscle is needed. Muscle cells are highly adaptive. They constantly assess their environment. When they sense resistance, tension, or load, they activate pathways that protect and strengthen the tissue. When they sense inactivity, they shift toward breakdown and conservation. Nutrition supplies the building blocks, but movement is the instruction manual. Without that instruction, the materials are never fully used. The good news is that movement does not need to be intense, complicated, or intimidating. Many people believe that if they cannot lift heavy weights or go to a gym, there is no point in trying. This belief keeps countless individuals trapped in weakness. In reality, the body responds to even small amounts of resistance, especially when it has been deprived of it for long periods. Simple actions make a profound difference. Standing up from a chair repeatedly, walking uphill, climbing stairs, carrying groceries, pushing against resistance bands, or holding a wall squat. All of these create enough mechanical stress to stimulate muscle fibers. The key is consistency, not intensity. When movement is combined with leucine-rich protein, the effect multiplies. Resistance exercise increases muscle sensitivity to amino acids. In other words, movement primes the muscle and protein completes the process. This synergy is especially important in older adults who experience anabolic resistance. Exercise temporarily reverses this resistance, allowing muscle tissue to respond more effectively to protein intake. This is why people who eat protein but remain sedentary often continue to lose muscle, and it's why those who move regularly but undereat protein struggle to recover and grow stronger. Both elements are necessary. Walking, often underestimated, plays a vital role. It improves circulation, insulin sensitivity, and mitochondrial function. Better blood flow delivers nutrients more efficiently to muscle tissue. Improved insulin sensitivity enhances amino acid uptake. Together, these factors support muscle maintenance and repair. Walking may not dramatically increase muscle size, but it preserves function and prevents rapid decline. Adding even light resistance elevates the benefits significantly. Resistance signals the body to reinforce muscle fibers and strengthen neuromuscular connections. These connections are critical for balance, coordination, and fall prevention. Strong muscles are important, but strong communication between the brain and muscles is equally essential. Movement also influences hormones. Physical activity stimulates growth hormone release, improves testosterone signaling, and enhances insulin-like growth factor activity, all of which support muscle health. These hormonal responses do not disappear with age. They simply require activation. Another critical component is timing. After movement, muscle cells become especially receptive to nutrients. This window allows protein, particularly leucine-rich protein, to be used more efficiently for repair and growth. When movement is followed by proper nutrition, the muscle-building signal is amplified. Sleep completes the cycle. Recovery occurs during rest. Deep sleep supports hormone release, tissue repair, and nervous system recovery. When nutrition, movement, and sleep align, muscle preservation becomes not only possible, but predictable. Fear often prevents people from moving. Fear of injury, fear of pain, fear of falling. Ironically, avoiding movement increases all of those risks. Weak muscles destabilize joints. Poor balance increases fall risk. Inactivity accelerates decline. Gradual controlled movement rebuilds confidence and resilience. The goal is not exhaustion. The goal is engagement. Muscles should feel worked, not destroyed. Consistent moderate effort produces better long-term results than sporadic intensity. The body thrives on routine. What's remarkable is how quickly adaptation begins. Within weeks of combining regular movement with adequate protein, many people notice improvements in posture, walking speed, grip strength, and endurance. These changes reinforce motivation and build momentum. Muscle is more than strength. It is protection. It cushions joints, stabilizes the spine, supports metabolism, and preserves independence. Every step you take, every time you rise from a chair, every object you carry sends a message to your body that strength is still required. Protein alone whispers, movement shouts. When both are present, the body listens. You do not need perfection. You do not need youth. You need consistency and the willingness to use your body as it was designed to be used. Muscle loss is not a sudden event. It is a gradual process, and so is muscle restoration. Every movement counts. Every meal matters. And when you bring them together, strength becomes a habit rather than a struggle. Your body adapts to what you ask of it. Ask for strength, and with the right nourishment and movement, it will respond.